as we go through these different parts, as we mentioned earlier, just make sure you keep your hands away from the machine and don't accidentally hit the foot pedal while we're going over these parts. If you like to, you could turn your machine off. I'm going to leave mine on for the sake of the light so I can show you the different parts, but it's always a good safety to turn it off. And also when you go to clean your machine, which we're going to learn about that a little later in the lesson, but you want to make sure that your machine is unplugged and turned off when you get ready to maintenance it, to clean it or to add a little bit of machine oil. The first part that we're going to learn about today is called the spool pins. Now, the spool pins are pretty much just what they say. They're little pins, and you set your thread right on top of the little pin here. This one on my machine is used for the upper thread for threading, and this one here on the front, it's used for the bobbin winding, which we'll get into bobbin winding and threading a little later in the series. Our next part is the bobbin winding spindle, located just right here on top of the sewing machine. Here we have a close-up of the bobbin winding spindle, and what this particular spindle is used for, the bobbin sits right on top of the spindle, and in my machine's case, it locks over to the right so that when the bobbin winds and it fills up and it finishes, it will pop back to the left when it's done. Now, as I mentioned earlier, these may be totally different on your machine, but on my machine, this is the bobbin winding spindle. Our next part is the thread guide for the bobbin winding. And I'm going to give you a close-up look at that. The bobbin will sit here, the thread sits here, it unwinds, and it sits on top of this or wraps around this little guide here, and then it comes back around and wraps around the bobbin. Let me give you a close-up of that so you can see what this little guide here looks like. Now, this is a close-up of the bobbin winding guide, or the thread guide for the bobbin. As you can see, it's just a little knob here, and the thread rides right under this little groove and backs back up to the bobbin. Again, this is our bobbin thread guide. Our next part is the pressure regulator, located right here on the back side of the top of the sewing machine. Here's a close-up of that. Here is a close-up view of the pressure regulator. It's kind of like a little knob within a knob, and it has a spring action to it. If you notice on the bottom, I can press that down, and then the pressure release valve, if you want to call it that, kind of sticks up. And if you want to add more pressure, you press it down, and that pretty much takes care of the pressure on the sewing machine, or the pressure on your fabric.